I want to go back a little bit because it was back, I remember when Prime Minister Modi gave his speech at the World Economic Forum. This was back in January when, the story, not just being delivered by the Prime Minister, but globally, was that India was doing a pretty good job. What created the false confidence and how did they get it so wrong?
So I think two things have changed from 2020 to 2021. The first is that in 2020, people were willing to forgive the government for making mistakes because the world was grappling. It was, none of us knew what to do. Lockdowns were considered the way to go. For a country like India, that lockdown, the national lockdown, actually proved to be a bad idea because a one-size-fits formula does not apply to a country as diverse as this. And this year, I will grant that the government has been smarter and it's gone the route of localized lockdowns as opposed to a pan-India lockdown. But in 2020, the biggest crisis was a humanitarian crisis when poor people, daily wage workers, started leaving the cities to go to their villages in the millions. It was the largest exodus of human beings that we'd seen since partition. Yet people forgave the government, though it was a policy error, to not have contingencies in place for them because it was so unexpected what happened. I think the complacency set in because as a percentage of infections, the fatalities seemed to be not as high as the rest of the world at all. So what we were able to take away from the 2020 data is that many more Indians were infected, again, than the official data told you. The infection fatality rate was actually so low that some experts I knew globally were calling it a mystery of science, that science had no answer to it. And I still don't know. I still don't know what happened, but it doesn't explain to me why we should have got lulled into not needing contingencies. I will confess that even someone like myself, when India started giving away vaccines, I felt quite proud. I was like, oh, this is the right thing to do. We're a big country. We're an emerging power. We should be helping people in distress. I had no idea that there would not be enough vaccines for a vaccine program, that, we would have purchased such few vaccines, that our bureaucrats would drag their feet on, let's say, clearances for a company like Pfizer or Moderna or even Sputnik. Even those approvals came much, much later than they should have. The other mistake that we made, and you're right, we were all caught up in this, hey, the worst is over. It wasn't just the government. It's just that we looked to the government to put the plan B and C in place. The other big mistake that we made was to think that there would be vaccine hesitancy in the beginning, that the vaccine rollout would not see a flood of people. There was some hesitancy in the beginning, but the moment everybody wanted vaccines, there weren't enough to go around. And finally, there was an over-centralization. It's now been let go of. But Delhi and the Modi government was trying to decide which state should get how many vaccines, right? And so when the state of Maharashtra, which had the maximum number of cases, which has India's financial capital, Mumbai, when it said, we've got the most cases, give us the most vaccines, It seemed like a no-brainer to me. The central government did not oblige, right?
So Barkha, I want to ask you a little bit more about that. Is there a backlash? Is there a feeling that India is too close to the United States, and where is the U.S.? Is this going to change the way the Indian government thinks about a country like China? How do you see this so far playing out geopolitically, if at all?
I think there was some disquiet and anger at the initial responses of the Biden administration. We know all prominent Indian American citizens did a lot of work in the back channels to get the Biden administration to change its mind. But you did see from policymakers a disenchantment, a kind of expression of frustration. The Quad was supposed to come together to use vaccines as an instrument of almost counter-diplomacy against the rise of China, which has also been using its vaccine program in the region for influence. And I think that's the game, the geostrategic game that India had got caught up in. I think in India, there is sometimes a strange sort of feeling that Democrats in government are less kindly disposed towards India than Republicans. You'll hear a lot of this from the average Indian, as I'm sure you've had on your trips to India. But I do believe that that hump has been crossed. It's my sense now that the two administrations are working together. I still think India would be very hesitant with China, especially given the year-long standoff in the upper Himalayas in Ladakh, which has, by the way, not been fully resolved. The media isn't talking about it because who has the time? Yeah.